Welcome back to the Fire Break. I'm Steve Wolf. As you know, the Fire Break is sponsored by Team Wildfire. Or if you didn't know, we are sponsored by Team Wildfire. We're developing innovative technologies for wildfire containment and control. I have got an amazing guest today. And I say amazing because she's a really amazing person. I have Nicole Pesqueira with us. And Nicole is a fire marshal for Brea. You guys know where Brea is, right? In the Altadena area, fire-prone area that caught a lot of crap this week in the form of pyrolysis. It's been a tough month. But you know, sometimes you watch somebody on TV and then you meet them and you feel like you know them, even though you never met them before. Well, that's what Nicole is for me. I feel like I know her because I follow her so closely on LinkedIn. And you know, Nicole's been really transparent about her journey over the last few years. She's been through some tough crap, and yet she's the most reliable source of a smile every time I go to LinkedIn. She's always got something good to say, something positive to share. Uh, Yesterday, I was looking through old junk in my closet, and I found a copy of the Optimist Creed. And I thought, that's Nicole. Just like always a smile, always something good, no matter what's going on, always a kind word, a word of encouragement. So, Nicole, thank you for that.
I love doing that kind of stuff. You know, having, like you said, I've had quite a challenging few years, and having something positive, something uplifting to start your day, I feel is so important. It's just kind of something to get you going, especially on those days when you don't feel like getting going. So, yeah, no, I love doing that stuff.
Well, welcome to the Fire Break.
Thank you,
How
thank
you
you.
feeling today?
I'm happy to be here. I'm a little tired. I had a late meeting last night, but you know, we're doing it. We got this.
Okay. So, what do you see as the big challenges in fire right now, both in fire service and in fire itself?
Well, I think the big deal right now, as you mentioned, are these wildfires. These wildfires that are turning to conflagrations and just making my job very difficult. And I feel
Well,
like
I mean, it's job security on the other hand, right?
that is true. That is true. But it's also, I feel like there's a big education piece that's missing. And it's because a lot of the residents that I get calls from or emails, they're all like, what are you going to do for me? Why aren't you helping me? We're thinking that we have this unlimited budget to save the world and stop all
Right.
the fires. And it's not that way. And I feel like right now it's a big educational piece. It's a big, hello, you got to do stuff too. This isn't just a me problem. This is a us problem. Let's all work together to come up with a solution to prevent this from happening, to try to stop this from happening in these homes that weren't designed to be there 50 plus years ago.
Right.
And that, you know, that's the big challenge we're seeing right now. I think overall in the fire service, since I've been in this about 10 years, I've seen a lot of progression. It's been slow. As we know, the fire service is not a fan of change. But I have seen, especially in the departments I work for, a culture shift. I've seen a lot of growth, a lot of improvement. I think but our big challenges are always going to be money, right? Never having enough money, having enough staffing to do the jobs that we need to do, to the ability we'd love them to be done. So
Yeah.
I wish that was a problem where we had endless amounts of money, but unfortunately, it doesn't work that
So do
way.
you feel like it really is a money thing though? Because it sounds like when people call you and say, "When are you going to solve my problem?" It sounds like if I were to sit home and eat junk food, sit on the sofa all day and never exercise, and go to my doctor and say, "When are you going to make me healthy?"
That is a great point. And yeah, no, for that part of the actual problem, no, that's well, it might be a money issue for them. It might be because there are obviously things they can do that don't cost much, but there are also things that do cost money if they really want to, um, protect their home, save their home.
Right.
And so that's a big challenge right now. But
Is that people can't afford to like clear the vegetation in the first 5 feet of their home, or they can't afford vent
or I think it's
covers,
the
or what is it?
priority of money. Like, what
Yeah.
is your priorities? Like for me,
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I'd rather go get a tattoo than spend money on this. But you know, other people, we have some priorities that may not be right for right now. And So it's finding that money and prioritizing it, I think. Because yeah, I think clearing out some of the brush and stuff, it's you could do it yourself if you wanted, or depending on how much you have, that's
Right.
definitely a bigger ordeal to take on by yourself, that you might want to pay someone to do it. But I think there's consequences and things you have to deal with when you live in these areas.
Yeah.
It's not like I remember having to evacuate some of these people back when I was an inspector, and they were yelling at me like, we had this scare, we had this fire, back in 2008. This is ridiculous. And it's like, I'm not God. Like, I can't just just make this not happen. I can't make that phone call.
Right.
So it's definitely one of those things where you're like, the attitude of those people should change. I'm sorry, my dog is
Hi,
upset.
doggy. Well, so when we look at the huge recent fires in Palisades and Altadena, Eaton, those fires, while there may have been in the early history of those fires some wildfire activity, those were really structure to structure conflagrations, right? And so if those fires had started, let's say on the east side of town as a structure fire, a grease fire on someone's stove, like the result would have been the same, right? That structure fire, when fed by sufficient wind, would have been its own source of ember cast, would have had the same result.
Yes.
So, we kind of lump all those preparatory activities under wildfire prevention.
Yeah. And I
But it
think
wasn't a wildfire.
no. I mean, there's a lot of things, and I think the normal person doesn't understand the water not being there, that water pressure not being there, but they don't understand a municipal water supply isn't designed for that. Like you just said, like, yeah, if it's a structure to structure, that's a whole different animal. And once, if you don't have water pressure, you have those winds. It's just a recipe for disaster. And even studies are starting to show that hardening your home can help in some aspects, but once it's structure to structure,
Yeah.
it's a different fight. It's a different challenge altogether. So it's
If you got another home 20 feet away from you, blow torching your house,
exactly,
direct flame contact. Yeah.
yeah. Hmm.
You're
Yep.
gonna have, well, we know what we're gonna have because you can look up the pictures now, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was crazy because when these fires hit, I was at home recovering from surgery, and I'm sitting there in bed with my leg elevated watching this happen, and I was like, "Oh no. Oh no." And then you just see other fires popping off and other things. And it's just been one of those things where you're like, oh, this is going to make my job really hard. But also, this is the time to get
Me.
buy-in, right? It's all about me.
You're gonna make my job hard.
But this is the time to get the buy-in of people, because
Yeah,
people are
yeah,
watching, they're seeing this, and they're terrified. And
yeah,
so that's kind of, we're trying to just run with this right now, right? Because this is the
yeah,
time to really get that education out, to get that compliance, to get all the things that we've been trying to do for years, that people are like, yeah, it's never going to happen to me. This is not a me problem. This is a you problem. Nothing's going to happen. Just make sure the fire doesn't hit my house.
right.
So we're starting to see that change.
I see. Well, was it frustrating to be, laid up during that, or
Yes.
were you thinking I'm in the best place I should be right now?
No, it was one of those things where I was like, I need to be in the office. I need to be answering these calls in person. I need to be there for my counsel. I need to be there for, the other staff. Like with this, it's been a lot of questions for Public Works, because they're the ones that deal with our hydrants.
Right.
And then it was a lot of questions for fire. So it was a lot of us having to work together, having to respond to these complaints and these calls, these concerns. And it was a lot of meetings with council, because of course, after seeing, the mayor of LA on TV, they're like, well, like, what are your plans? What are you doing? What can we do more? Like, how can we support you? And so it was just like a whole snowball of things that came out of those meetings. And I can tell you, my time healing from surgery was wild. I did not realize
Right.
that
Not exactly a stress-free environment
no,
for
it
healing, right?
definitely was not. And but I knew, like, I just knew, like, I've got to do this. I got to do this. I got to be at home. I'm at home with my laptop, just just going and doing what I can, calling people that I can, and doing all that. So it was definitely a crazy month, so to speak, and
No
we're
kidding.
still experiencing that fallout.
Sure. No, it's like, Nicole, we've got the biggest fire ever in LA. Pass. I'm sitting this one out at home. Like, and if you were to say pass, I'll be there for the next one. You wouldn't be wrong because the next one's right around the corner.
Exactly. I mean, this is something that we're seeing every year now, right? And fire season is becoming an all year round problem.
Yeah,
So,
it's not right. I don't utter the phrase fire season anymore, right? It's
yeah.
fire year.
Yeah.
With, periods of higher frequency and lower frequency. But if you look at the devastation numbers, right? If you look at, Lahaina, Palisades, Eaton, Marshall, like these were, December, January fires.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is when people's guard is supposedly lowest, right? Because they're thinking, oh, we're out of the season. It's not the time to worry.
Exactly. I mean, as we're seeing, this past summer we had. I mean, there was some days that I'm like, wow, my AC broke right when those when that heat was so hot, and so everything's dry. We get all these rains that happen for a very short stint, and then everything grows, everything's green, and then we get hit with that intense heat, dries everything out, and then here we are. And then, once it grows like a weed, we say that saying, right? It just grows, and it grows fast, and we'll have them cleared out in May, and just a couple months later, we're back to where we were, just before that. So it's a constant battle, and you have to stay on top of all this stuff. I mean, it's just a year-round problem nowadays.
Yeah. So you said, we built in areas where 50 years ago we would have had the wisdom to read the land properly and say, not here, friend. Right. But then developers go in and they just, with no sense of history of the land, with no borrowing from indigenous wisdoms. They're just like, oh, there's a nice tract, and throw in a couple thousand homes, and that's that.
You would think, even after these fires, I had a group come to me and wanted to build in one of our very high fire severity zones, I should say, and they wanted to put it was like an assisted living facility, and this was it was for 350, and I was like, wow, like you really want to do this after all the stuff you just saw on the TV? Like, wow, no way. So it's just, you would think that mindset would stop, for people that want to build in these areas, but that hasn't changed. And I think that goes back to this housing crisis that we have in California, right? Everyone wants to make a little profit, or, have an ADU in their house now, or in their backyard or side yard. And you're just seeing this shift where we're seeing all this growth in homes, and it doesn't matter where it's at, they just want to build it. And it's just crazy to see that. I mean,
we put a man on the moon, a pretty inhospitable environment, but we did it with a lot of preparation. It's like, okay, it's going to be really cold, and it's going to be really hot, and it's going to be really dry, and we planned accordingly. So I would think you could put a home or an assisted living anywhere you want if you're willing to spend the money to build it, in a fireproof way.
Yeah, and make sure we have fire access too, because in that area we had one road, like one road in, one road out.
One road, yeah.
So it definitely helps if you're building these to what we have in California, 7A standards. You're going to have a better chance. It's going to be better for you. Is it 100%? If you have like we said, a conflagration, you've got a structure to structure, it may not be as effective, unfortunately. But from the actual wildfire perspective, we do know that it works.
Yeah, if you put 100 feet of blacktop around your place with a parking lot, and but that's right. You don't build it out of fuel.
Yeah.
Right, you build it out of stone. There's things. Right, the pyramid's still there. It's never had a fire issue.
Yes.
Right? So you could do it, but that wouldn't protect you from smoke when your neighborhood's burning down.
Yeah,
exactly. You could still end up with no breathable air.
I think that the one thing that that we need to look at overall is, I mean, we obviously we have a lot of existing structures that are right on top of each other,
Yeah.
but also making sure we have that spacing between homes that makes sense in these areas as well. Because as we can see, it number travels pretty far without wind. And so
Yeah.
with wind, that makes it a whole other animal. So,
Right. You can get a 40-mile ember cast.
yep,
Not much you could do about that.
exactly.
So do you think strategies for fire containment and fire suppression are going to change from any
You know,
lessons taken from this?
I feel like we've seen it be a firefight from the sky. And I do think that is, I mean, but when you have those winds, that's once again limiting
Right.
you.
We
So
spent all our money on aircraft and now we can't use them because it's a wind-driven fire.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know because firefighting is not my expertise, but I don't know from a firefighting perspective how different we can get when we have water supply that's going to be strained, when we have when we're having conditions like this, trying to bring water in and like trying to get people on the ground to cut stuff out, weeds out and stuff, and to make those fire breaks. I think that you're always going to have challenges with that. But I do think early detection is the new thing we're going to see. We've been looking at AI cameras that actually will detect early and notify dispatch as soon as they see smoke in the area and stuff like that. And I think you're gonna see that. You're gonna hope for more of an early detection on something like this. I think there's going to be more accountability for the utility companies. I foresee that being something that changes a bit. Kind of scary, some of the regulation stuff, like bills that are being proposed right now. There's this one in California called AB 306 that's basically trying to freeze codes for 6 years. And that's to help
Freeze the
people.
code.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And
Right.
they're just to help the people rebuild, they say, but that does not make sense. And any mind of mine, obviously doing this for a living, codes help us, right, to not have this stuff happen again. Everything, and we're always trying to react to new technologies and things that are out there. So you freezing codes for 6 years is huge. That is a huge fall behind that we would have to play catch up on. And I can't even fathom if that goes through the way it's proposed right now.
Well,
We're hearing
who
that,
proposed that and why?
yeah,
I mean,
it's just
you
crazy
don't
to
even
me.
have to answer that.
It's crazy to me. Yeah, it's crazy, and that's why I do what I do, though, right? And I'm the president for our California Fire Prevention Officers, and we have a legislation committee. We're involved in code development. We're in all this stuff. This is our world, right? And so we're gonna fight for all that stuff, and it's just I'm very passionate about it. I am, because I truly believe in it. My chief was giving me a hard time because he just noticed I have Smokey Bear tattooed on me.
Oh, I love Smokey Bear. That's
And
great.
he's like, wow, you're committed. I was like, that guy looked at me when I was a kid and said, only you. And
Yeah. And you
joke about it.
believe
I've kept that burden with me all my life.
now when he was a kid, was he Paddington?
That's a great question. All I know is he's been a senior bear for like what, 75 years or something.
Yeah,
He's been around a long time.
right. So right now is a kind of a good time for your spot, right? Because during the weeks of the fire, it was like, how are we going to get suppression amped up a dozen factor here?
Mm-hmm.
We need more tools for putting out fire. But after the fire,
Mm-hmm.
now people are saying, okay, how do we stop this from happening again?
Yes.
So now for the first time, people actually, give a hoot about prevention.
Exactly.
But will they come around and put money behind prevention the way they put around suppression?
It's true. I mean, we've always been the redheaded stepchildren of the fire department, and it's a challenge because firefighters are like, hey, stop doing such a good job. We want to fire, and then they're like, but you understand, my whole job is preventing them. Like that's what we do, and we don't want people to lose structures or their life. I mean, obviously, life safety being number one. And so it's always been a battle of people not understanding us, what we do, our values, costing businesses money, but it's to keep them safe, right? And
Right.
homeowners making sure that they're safe. Everybody, our job is life safety, and people don't understand what that means and why it's important until something catastrophic happens. I mean, we always look at those historical fires, right? Station Nightclub fire, the Triangle Shirtwaist fire,
Yeah.
all of them. There's so many of them. There's even one I think I saw a few weeks ago out of country that was kind of
Yeah.
similar to the Station
It,
Nightclub.
right. It was the, what was that group called? White
White,
something?
White Snake,
White
White
Snake?
Shark, something. What was that?
It was the
Yeah,
Boston fire, right?
yeah,
Where the pyro set the ceiling on
yeah.
fire,
Uh-huh.
and then the exact same thing just happened.
Yes, it was just crazy to me. Like, hey, and that shows you progressively how far we've come in the nation, especially in California. We're one of those ones that are just kind of ahead of the curve always, right? We're always
Yeah.
trying to be pushing that narrative that codes are important and we're going to be progressive and be on top of all that stuff.
And then how do you get the code enforced? Is it a carrot or a stick?
That's that is a whole other challenge there, but we ride on the coattails of tragedies, and this is where we shine, right? This is where we know we got to step up and educate everybody and get them on board for this, because we've already drank the Kool-Aid. We are preaching the word of the fire code, and it's getting everyone else on board, and this is where you get that buy-in, at least for a little while. People are going to settle back into, oh, it's not going to happen to me again, and it's just hard. But if we continue to see devastating fires like the ones we just saw in Pacific Palisades and that Eaton fire, like, we will, I think we're going to have a better success rate at keeping people
You
on.
said if we keep seeing fires like that, do you think there's any doubt that we will keep seeing fires?
No, unfortunately, and I hate saying that, but we will. Whether it's human started, whether it is a utility failure, whether it's a vehicle, whatever it is, it's going to happen. These fires happen, and there's, and unfortunately, you can't prevent all fires, right? I'm in the line of work where I would love to say that we have 100% success rate, but that's impossible. But it's definitely reduced as we've come with codes and have come up with these things to definitely help. And we do have science backing a lot of the stuff we're finding, especially where these fires have hit, what works and what saves homes.
So how do you use that in an era where science is so heavily discounted?
It's hard.
Like, if science doesn't align with political or economic expedience, it's just dismissed.
It's been the social media part, especially because people just believe anything they see on this stuff now. And that was another thing. While I'm sitting here recovering from surgery and you're seeing all the conspiracy theories, you're seeing all of these concepts that are just not true, just being thrown all over the internet. And you're just like, this is wild.
You're saying it wasn't the space lasers?
I have a buddy who sends me something every day, and I get so mad. I'm like, it's not even like that. That's not even how this works. But you don't understand. No, it's a land grab. They're going to take all the homes. We're taking over. They're taking over. Even Tiago's upset about it.
I see that.
So it's one of those things where you really have to go heavy on the education piece. Like, we're doing a town hall. We're doing a town hall next month, and we actually have a speaker. He's a retired captain. He also he's doing work in wildfire and home hardening and all that stuff. He has a business where he does all that, and he saved his home in Altadena, and he has video of him protecting his homes and his neighbors' homes and how he did it. And so we're going to have him come and speak for a little bit at our town hall, because people can hear me talk about home hardening till I'm blue in the face, and I can only speak about my parameters and the code and what makes sense for my part of it. But having someone who actually was in it and was able to save his home, people are want to hear that. They're going to want to hear a different perspective. So I think it's hitting them from all the different angles, hitting them on social media, hitting them with people who have lived through it that can speak for that, and how to prepare for the worst case scenario and what that means. And it's education. It really is.
Yeah, no, the thing I worry about that, though, is we've tried education for a lot of other problems, and there's no follow through, right? educated people like, oh, smoking is bad for you, right? Or eating too much processed food is bad for you, or whatever. Like the education's out there and people have the facts, but they don't act on them. So how do you bridge that gap from knowledge to action?
There's another thing we're looking at doing in my town is we're trying to find, and we do think these will come at some point, our home hardening grant. So we get money to help incentivize people to harden their homes. We'll give them a rebate up to a certain dollar amount to do little things to help. And I mean, I think it's a start. We're not going to give them, $10,000 to just go harden that home or whatever, but we can at least start with little things, right? Like vents and stuff like that. And I foresee us hopefully doing something like that if we get a grant for it, to try to help people realize it's a them problem too. It's not just it's just not a fire department, a city problem, a municipality problem. This is a you problem. You got to be proactive as well. Because I do feel like, especially now, we have people that are calling, what can I do? And then you tell them what they can do, and they're like, oh, that costs money. And then it's like, oh, no one ever wants to invest in their homes. And
that's losing your house, right?
Because it's an investment that you don't see a return on right away or all the time until something happens, right? So it's hard. Sometimes it's hard for people to justify, like, I'm going to spend all this money for something that's a what if. And that always has and will be the challenge.
Yeah, I guess it depends how realistic people think the what if is.
Exactly.
Right? And if you go to the local gun shop, it's full of people who are there to prepare for the what if, right? Yeah. And they don't have any problem selling that product.
Yeah.
But you don't have to climb a 30-foot ladder to install it.
Exactly.
For most of them. Right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. We will see. We'll see how it goes. I do know that we're seeing more consideration, more care than we ever have, and that's good. I'm doing everything I can at this point to get that buy-in and continue to keep that buy-in, especially as we go into brush clearance season next month. And we'll see how it goes. I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic. But we do know what's ahead. We do know this is going to be a challenge. We do, and it will forever be a challenge. And I laughed when I came back as fire marshal in my town. I was like, my old department didn't have any WUI. We had no we had no weeds and stuff to worry about. And then I come here and I'm like, wow, this is a reality check for me. This is something. This is where I'm spending most of my time. It's a lot. It is an absolute lot. But hey, it's here. We got to deal with it. Let's do the best we can. Let's make it as safe as we can. Let's protect the homes as best we can, and hopefully everyone follows suit. You're only as good as your neighbors, right? So if your neighbors aren't taking care of their yards, if they're not taking care of their homes, that's once again you've got a bigger hazard, a bigger issue to worry about. We do have regs coming in for zone 0. I think they're saying around September. So that's going to be interesting to see how enforcement goes for that and what that truly means. Because at 0 to 5 feet, if you're telling people who've had homes there for years to start clearing out their planters and not have anything there, whatever those parameters are going to be, people aren't going to be happy. So it's going to will forever be challenged in these areas, I think. And you do what you can, the best you can, but
yeah, I wonder once they start giving away those home hardening grants, we're going to have more and more reports of people falling off ladders.
There's always
unintended.
There's always a trade-off. Where are we going here?
Right. What happened? Yeah. Did you break your hips? Well, I was putting in my vents.
It's always something, right? I mean. Right. If we weren't getting those calls for 2 a.m. toe pain, now we're going to get them for people falling off ladders. So
right. It's going to be something. Yeah, it is. So you talked about, riding the coattails of tragedy. It seems like those coattails are shorter and shorter these days, though, right? Because by 2 weeks from now, it'll be like, what fire? I'm following the 𝐬𝐿 story or whatever, right? Like people have a really short memory on these things. Probably not for the individuals who lost their homes,
for sure.
But for the rest of the population, they don't take the time to really get what they could get out of the lessons.
We did just have the CAL FIRE maps come out, which are new updated maps for the high fire severity zones in each of our jurisdictions. And all of them have increased from what I understand. I know my town has, and a majority of them have increased significantly, or it's really kind of changed. But people are now worried about their insurance, right? So that's the other battle. But I think that's the one thing that we kind of have, and I won't say it's a positive because insurance is frustrating. My dog is chewing on my door. I need to yell at him. Tiago, come here. This dog. He's a very needy dog. With a Portuguese name.
You're talking about insurance, right?
Yes. So insurance. Insurance is something that we're seeing as a big battle, right? And people's insurance are getting dropped, or it's being tripled, quadrupled. It's just insane, right? And while it's not fun for any of us, insurance is driving a lot of this too. And it's also forcing people to do stuff because they want to have insurance, or they don't want to pay insane amounts of money for their insurance. So I do think we have that in our corner right now, which helps, because insurance hasn't forgotten, and they're not going to forget. And these new maps coming out are now putting people in high fire severity zones that may not have been there before. So
and the zones is a pretty fat paintbrush too, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Right. You could do everything for your lot and your home and actually harden it very effectively. But if the neighborhood is perceived to be high risk, then you get lumped into that.
Yes, correct. And obviously as a department, as a city, we've taken steps to try to we have our Fire Safe Council I mentioned earlier that we have a meeting tonight. We have an FRRC designation, which put us on this list, which helps get us priority grants from the state, as well as also helps people get discounts on their insurance. So, we do little things there that we can to help, but also I think the insurance is helping as well in that sense, at least of getting people to want to get their rates down. So they're going to do stuff too. So we do have a little bit of momentum there as well. So it's, honestly, I put on the news every night, and I'm still seeing stories about people trying to rebuild right now. So they're not letting people forget this time. And I think if this is the first fires we've had of this devastation that I can recall in any recent history that are close to home, that we're seeing that rebuilding and seeing all those problems. So it's definitely different this time. It's definitely different.
Well, if they want to go into the areas where they were, now they're going into toxic waste mess.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that all has to be cleared first.
Yeah. Then
deciding what the zoning is going to be and what the applicable code will be. Are they going to change it, or are they going to just say rebuild what you had?
Yeah. And that scares me too. It's like, obviously what you had didn't work. And my dog is being so difficult right now. It's like it's rebuilding what you had isn't going to work, right? Because it didn't work this last time. So can we please consider doing the right thing? Can we consider updating the codes as we should?
What's the new code that deals with fences perpendicular to your house attached?
The new code with fences.
Yeah, because that 0 to 5 zone is going to include flammable fences that are attached to your house. Fences or fuses.
I'm just trying to, not enough caffeine this morning, but we do have the new California WUI code that's coming in January 1st, as long as that doesn't get held up by any of these bills that are going on, which is going to encompass everything related that we have to the wildland, including our 7A standards, anything in 49 of the fire code, and anything else that we have. It's all going to kind of be lumped in that one code. But the fencing one off the top of my head it's not coming to mind. But I know what you're talking about. But I don't know where that regulation is. But yeah, I think any combustibility of fences, all that stuff.
They're saying, I think I read it, you can have a combustible fence that runs parallel to your house, but not perpendicular and attached to your house.
Yeah.
So people have to remove that section where there's usually a gate or something.
Interesting. Yeah, that one I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm not out there actively enforcing it. So sometimes
Right.
I forget some of those regulations. But yeah, that would make sense that there's something like that out there for sure.
So you said that you've been in this game for 10 years.
Hmm.
What were you doing before?
So I've worked city government since I was 16. So it's just been different departments while I was in school. So I worked for the city of Placentia as a community services leader. So I was working in drop-in center with at-risk kids. And then I got promoted to the city clerk's office. So I was dealing with records and I did a lot of records requests and whatnot. I did that for Placentia. And then I went over to Orange and worked for them. In 2008, remember we had a real bad economy and no one was hiring, so they transferred me to go work in the fire department. And I did not want to go, if you would believe it or not. I did not.
Wow.
I don't want to work with those stinking firemen. I don't want to do it. No way. You saw me just going kicking and screaming. I was so mad that they put me over there, but they needed my help for some clerical work because they had lost their prevention secretary at the time. So I went in there and I just got my degree in psychology. I wanted to be a therapist. I was like, yeah, let's go. Let's do this. And my dad's like, you should wait. You should probably not go get your master's. You should kind of go see like what the world has out there for you. And I'm applying for jobs everywhere. Nothing was happening. Nothing was working. And I was like, Dad, you told me when I got a degree, I'd have a job and it would be pay well and I'd be all this stuff. And he was like, you will. It's gonna pay off. It's just the economy is really bad right now. I'm like, no, you lied to me. You made me go through all this for nothing. I was so mad. And then when I got transferred to the fire department, I actually saw what an inspector did. I asked the fire marshal at the time, how do I do that? And he's like, oh, go to Santa Ana College for a couple years. You could do that too. And I was like, no way. So I would go at night and do online classes while I was working full time, and work paid for it. So it just kind of worked out, and the rest is history, right? I got picked up in Pasadena and made my way in this for 10 years. So never what I planned on doing for a job. I really wanted to be a therapist to troubled teenagers, oddly enough. And now I'm using my degree trying to convince people to prevent fires. So it's
I would imagine that, as a fire marshal, you're a part-time therapist to all the people who work under you.
Oh yes, that for sure. And my chief laughed one time because we had an inspection. We did this joint inspection, and he saw me walk off with one guy, and we were just talking over, and he was kind of he was basically telling on himself and telling me all the stuff that was wrong with the occupancy we were walking. And my chief looked at me and he's like, why were you over there? I'm like, oh, this guy just told on himself. He told me everything that was wrong and what needed to be fixed and what wasn't in compliance. He's like, how in the world did you get this guy to do that? And I said, I'm really good at this. I'm really good at talking to people and getting them to tell on themselves and admit stuff. And I'm also really good at detecting when they're lying and stuff. And he laughed. He's like, you're really good at that. Like, it's really impressive. And I'm like, I really think that came from my schooling. And people are like, well, how's a psychology degree at all related to being a fire marshal? And I'm like, I deal with politics and people all day long. So having a degree where I learn how people think, how they react, why they are the way they are, it really does help to how you talk to your audience. And what I learned, as long as you don't BS these people and you're upfront and you're just a straight shooter, they appreciate that. And it really does get you, it gets you pretty far when it comes to enforcement, I feel.
Yeah. And when you say this guy, ratted himself out,
Mm-hmm.
it seems like we need to change the culture around guilt from non-compliance to one more about exploration of non-compliance.
Yes.
Right. When pilots were, scolded or reprimanded because they had missed something on a checklist, they just stopped reporting the mistakes they had made. But when they changed the culture to say, hey, the mistake you made, 20 other people might make that mistake and die this year. Let's take blame out of it and just use everything as a learning opportunity.
Exactly. And that's where that education piece comes in, what the world I'm in is not, we're not fighting the fires, right? We're not the heroes. We're not there out there actively, saving lives, but we are out there
Well, you
preventing.
are, I think.
Yeah, but I mean, we're preventing tragedies. We're preventing those things, and so it's a thankless job in a sense, right? Because every day that we don't have a fire is considered a successful day in my world. But
Yeah.
how do you really truly measure that for things that show how effective what we do is on for the day-to-day basis for your people, right? So it's it's a different kind of job, I feel, but that education piece is so important, and getting people the buy-in is going to help get you where you need to get in compliance. And yeah, it's not a shame, it's not a how dare you, and it's not a you need to do this now because I said so.
Right.
It is, this is going to help save your life. You maintaining your sprinkler system is similar to you doing an oil change on your car, or really trying to put it in a way that people can understand, and using that to leverage compliance, and using that to continue the safety journey that we're all on.
Yeah, it's fascinating, the correlations to other. It seems to correlate so well to healthcare, right? That the yoga teacher and the nutritionist get crappy pay and not any credit.
Mm-hmm.
It's only the surgeon who gets the big bucks and the glory, right?
Yes,
But they're going in to fix something that the other people could have, in many cases, prevented.
exactly. 100%. Yeah. That's the great way to put it. I hadn't even thought about it like that, but yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? We yeah. So so if, let's say, your career continues in the direction it's going, um, and you have more authority, more power, more budget, what would you do?
For me, in a perfect world, I'd have more staff. I would have I would have money to get to have more staff to do better all year round. Like we do right now, brush clearance inspections twice a year, but we're looking at kind of expanding our codes a little bit to even larger defensible space requirements, and I would love to have a full-time person just on the weeds. I would love to have endless money for education, and getting stuff, mailers out, and door knocking, and doing home assessments for people, and also endless money for training, so we could stay
Yeah.
up on all the different requirements and regulations, because there are so many and stuff coming down and changing, and different things that we're hearing that may work, that maybe the state doesn't recognize yet. I mean, you just need to know about all the technologies and all the ideas out there. So having money for training, and then also having money to help people, whether it be with brush clearance, whether it be with hardening their
Yeah.
homes. I feel like that would be, in a perfect world, we'd have a good chance. And I say chance because there's obviously factors that are outside our control that can still affect a fire that could potentially burn structures, even if they are hardened. But that definitely gives us a way better chance than what we have right now.
Yeah. Well, most of the firefighters I know, the salary is a bonus, right?
Mhm.
They're basically like, hey, I get to go out and do something I love every day, and they pay me for it, right? So when you think about doing brush inspections, we really think about the fire department as a response agency, rather than a prevention agency, because that's how it started, right?
Yes.
Although now we see the value of prevention. But I would imagine if if an engine company pulled up on my house one day and they said, "Well, we're between fires. Do you mind if we pull some brush?" I'd say, "Wow, that would be amazing." What not just a relationship builder, but they're actually going out there and minimizing the likelihood I'll lose my house.
I love
Uh,
that idea. And I think we've talked about potentially looking at, or even like the CAL FIRE hand crews that are nearby, and whatnot, to kind of help with clearing. We've also looked at, I think I forget what the other volunteer group is, but there's some that we had issues. I think we used one of them in the past, and they ended up like tagging up like bathrooms, or I mean, depending on who, not obviously not our firefighters, but like a volunteer group. So there have been some issues when we tried to do stuff like that, but it would be cool. I think there's liabilities in that, just in case something, they cut the weeds too much, and then there's like a mudslide or, a landslide, something like that. So
Right.
there's always, in a litigious world,
Edge cases, yeah.
there's always, there's stuff factors to consider. So I do think it's a great idea, but people are always going to not be happy. Or you cut too much, or you cut down my rose bush. How dare you? Or whatever it could be. I mean, there's always problems with that too, right? So
Sure.
I feel like those are some challenges that come with that. It's trying to figure out that dance of how to do it. And it's like a smoke alarm installation. Even that has liabilities on installing if one of those don't work and somebody dies, and we did a smoke alarm install for you. So there's always stuff that you have to consider, or waivers that might need to be signed, unfortunately. But hey, it's part of the world we live in.
Yeah, but end of the day, I suspect you'd be more interested in doing the right thing
Oh yeah.
than the petty little things that could go wrong.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, I think if there's a waiver to consider or something like that, then by all means, like, why not? Why not explore that?
Sure. And one of the problems with the particularly wildland firefighters is the seasonal nature of the work.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's very hard to get somebody to commit to a job when you can only keep them employed for a few months of the year.
Yeah,
But there's certainly work to be done all year.
definitely.
Right. And if they were to expand that role to more, physical prevention activities.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a bad idea. I mean, I know they looked at the like the correctional facility crews too, to do some of that work.
What about liability?
Yeah, right. Like in the parks and stuff, at least.
No.
But then we heard we were joking about it last night. We heard one of those guys like took off, and you're like, oh yeah, we don't want them running around our town. Like,
Yeah,
oh,
right.
could you imagine if one just left or anything like that? So there's so many. There's so many things that we look at, and then we're like, oh, that could be bad, or oh, there's this other side to it. So it's never an easy decision. Like, we're going to do that tomorrow. There's so many other considerations and factors that you have to look into before you can actually implement something like that.
Well, while we're talking about bad guys, and maybe the guy who ran off from the crew in the park, he got caught with a joint in the wrong place or whatever, and now the taxpayers have the burden of supporting him.
Yeah.
Right? When many people who are in jail represent no physical threat to the community,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because
Yeah.
it's used punitively rather than protectively.
Yeah. I
But
mean, typically
we
people
point a lot of fingers at the utility companies,
yes.
right? So,
Yes.
And then, where they're vilified,
Mm-hmm.
where instead of people taking the view like, hey, I want electricity, but electricity is dangerous, and in exchange for having it, I'm willing to accept that there's some risks that go with it.
Yes. And
Right? Just like I have a fireplace,
Mhm.
it could start a fire in my house. It's like,
Yes.
okay, well, I accept that risk.
And then when we have those rolling blackouts, they get upset too, even though they're notified in advance. Well, my food is spoiled. I've been without power, and there's accommodations that can be made for those, with health issues or whatever that might need power. But once again, you living in these areas, you know what you're signing up for, and this is a preventative measure to help hopefully not spark another fire. And
Right.
so it's one of those things where, I mean, people are up in arms about that more than anything when they don't have power during these like wind events and
Yeah.
stuff. And it just boggles my mind, because they see what happens when wind happens and there's electrical power. It's bad. It's usually pretty bad and devastating nonetheless. So I don't know. It's just, that's a whole other battle. But what that means for utility companies owning their part in it, and I feel like I mean, and I'm just getting what everyone else is getting on the news when it came to these recent fires, like with the Eaton fire. They kept saying, this was a utility issue. This was the utilities that caused the problem. And at first, the utility companies were denying that it was something, the power was shut off. And then I think they changed their tune later. It's like, well, what is the story? Like, what is
Right.
the story with this? And having them own their part. I know their lawsuits are going to be flying at them, but it's just one of those things. I think it's like, own your part. If you're part of the problem, come on.
Right. Yeah, with
Yeah.
the utility companies, like, I think we have to accept that there's risk, but we
Mhm.
also won't tolerate when there's excessive profit at the cost of safety.
Agreed. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Everyone, hey, you put in the money, you built the work, you put up the network, you're entitled to make money. but not cut so many corners that you're putting the population at risk.
Exactly. Maintain what you have. Don't. I mean, I do fire investigations as well, and I talk to other fire investigators. I was on a fire that I investigated where the power company was taking power poles and right in the middle of a snowstorm and stuff like that. I had a fire up in the mountains, and they there was like a pole that fell down, and they ran and took it just in case it started it, and they took off with it, and they just disposed of it. I had a fire on a gas meter. The gas company came and took the meter before I could even do my investigation.
Wow.
It's kind of crazy, but these utility companies need to be held accountable too, because a lot of that stuff just disappears.
That's evidence tampering, right?
Yes, yeah. They take it before, and they'll claim it's for safety reasons or whatever that is. But
job safety.
I don't, it's one of those things where you're like, and then all of a sudden the meter's missing and you can't find it when you ask them for it, so it's kind of
lost in the evidence room.
Right. It's crazy how that works. But these companies are good about having people go in the craziest of weather and go and take that stuff. I imagine they pay them a pretty good penny to go grab that out of a storm. Because it was interesting when the fire I had on that one, I think the snow had affected something. It ended up being the snow had affected something on the gas meter and caused they cracked the gas meter, and gas leaked into the home and found an ignition source, and the house blew up on fire. But there was a power pole that was really close that potentially could have been the problem too. And we weren't even able to look at it because the neighbors were saying they literally watched them swap out the pole, like in the middle of a snowstorm. It was crazy. Wow. So they don't care. They're just doing their thing, and it's crazy. It's just a crazy world we live in.
So the movie Chinatown wasn't so far-fetched, huh? Yeah.
Just wild.
Very, very interesting. Wow. Well, I'm really excited to see what's next for you. And I guess I don't have to look too far, because I don't have to look further than LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn's where it's at. This year is very much focused on being president of the California FPOs. I have a lot of traveling to do. I keep joking. It's a lot of shaking hands, kissing babies, but we're showing off what California does in the fire prevention world, and we're going. We already made it to Washington, D.C., and we're headed to, I think, Ohio this year. We're headed to Vegas for a conference, and Sacramento for some legislation trips, and just a lot. There's a lot going on with us, so it's kind of a neat thing. And I encourage anyone who's interested in the fire prevention world to check out the Fire Prevention Officer Group. It's firepreventionofficers.org. There's my shameless plug.
Good. Fire Prevention Officer. That's pretty easy to remember, too.
Yeah.
Well, I hope people listen to you.
I hope so, too.
It's not that we don't know what to do. Right?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't anything we didn't know before. It's just getting that message out there, and I hope so. I hope people listen this time around.
Yeah, me too. Do you think California has the best firefighters?
I'm biased, but yes.
And the best equipment?
I believe that we do. I feel like we're where it's at when it comes to a lot of this stuff.
Okay. That's what concerns me when I look at the footage of Palisades, and I say, well, this is the result of the best firefighters with the best equipment doing the best they could. And this is the result. Like, really no ability to corral that.
Yeah.
So I wonder what, if the people are as good as they can be, and I believe they are, then, what's the tool that they need?
And that's where I think we're going to see everyone looking at the municipal water supply system and what that means and how to upgrade that, which I don't think anyone realizes how much that would cost. And also, we're hearing a lot with helihydrants. Helihydrants is another thing that's coming in a lot, where we're having these big, massive tanks of water for the helicopters to pull water from. And so, I like I said, the future of firefighting is in the sky.
You think the future is in the sky?
I think so. I think, except for wind.
Wind-driven fires are the ones that cause most of the destruction. I worry about that.
See, Tiago, come here. He's like literally chewing on the door right now. He closed the door and is chewing on it. He's a little
Wow.
brat. Uh, he wants the attention, and he's not having it,
All
unfortunately.
right. Well, we'll let you give him some attention because it sounds like you're going to be without a door otherwise.
It's true. Now he's going for the doorknob. Jeez.
Well, what's the doorknob made out of?
Just
Non-flammable, right?
yeah, it's not.
That's so funny.
I foresee firefighting in the sky. I don't know. We're going to see creative ideas with drones and all kinds of stuff. I feel, but it'll be really interesting to see what solutions they come up with, in the future.
It sounds like it's about right. I think we're going to see a lot of new technology because people think the answer's in the next black box coming off the line.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, the answers are really interpersonal and personal responsibility and doing the things that you can do, the basic things.
Take the ownership, harden your home.
Yeah, right. Sometimes it comes to diet and exercise, not Ozempic, right? We can't always be looking for the next magic thing when we haven't done the work ourselves.
Yes.
So we'll see. I'm excited and excited
I
to
mean,
follow
it's
your career.
an interesting year for legislation for us in California. I think
Yep.
we have a lot of proposed bills out there for wildland and insurance and all that. So it's going to be really interesting to see what sticks in regards to that.
Yeah.
But we have that new California WUI code that we've got, and that's kind of exciting. We're the first to actually adopt that IWUI code in its entirety and make it California specific. So it's kind of neat. And it'll be neat to kind of see where California goes with all this stuff. And being a part of it's really cool, even though it's a lot. And trying to stay on top of all this stuff is a lot. But
right. Well, it's an ever changing environment there.
Definitely.
And it looks like the biggest part of the environment that's changing is the legal, the code, the insurance landscape.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I wish you all the luck in that.
Thanks.
Yeah. Nicole, thanks so much for joining me on the show today.
No, thanks for having me. This was fun.
Absolutely. Nicole Pesqueira, Fire Marshal in Brea. Thanks for joining us. And thank you all at home or wherever you're listening or watching. You should be watching because this is fun to watch. Anyway, you've been spending the last hour here on the Fire Break. I'm Steve Wolf. We're sponsored by Team Wildfire. Till I see you again, take care, be safe, and we'll see you at the next one.